What's up, guys? Welcome back to the episode. Now we're gonna go ahead and troubleshoot this car in hopes to get this thing started for the first time and take it on its first run, so stay tuned. Okay, so where we left off last episode was we got this thing fired up for the first time and it was misfiring pretty bad, so we shut it off, double checking our connections and everything, and then when we went to start it up for the second time, it just would not fire at the coil, but we did get injector pulse, so that tells me that the sensor inside the distributor is working like it should, so we're going to troubleshoot that. But before I do that, I was complaining about the fuel pressure regulator. It was too high on the pressure at idle, and that's with the adjuster all the way out. So I went ahead and got a new fuel pressure regulator. Now it's a different brand, but the same type of design. And I went with the Tomei. So we're gonna be swapping this one in place of that one. That one's an Ip Man. It was made out of Italy, but hopefully we have better luck with this one. And I'm gonna swap the Marshall gauge onto this one because it is a better gauge than what is supplied. So we're gonna do that. I actually picked up another tack adapter because that thing was really hot. Whenever we, put our hands on it, it was pretty hot. So I'm not sure if that's the problem. And also, because I had a warranty on this part, I got a new power transistor. And there is a procedure for troubleshooting that. But my procedure is warranty, swap it with a new part. You know it's good. It's just going to cut down the troubleshooting time. So we're going to go ahead and replace that as well. I'm going to be double checking fuses and everything like that. And hopefully we get this thing started back up. And then from there, we will troubleshoot the misfire if it still has it, and hopefully we get everything panned out on this episode to where we could take it on its first run. So let's go ahead and start this thing. Now here's a helpful tool that I like to use for my diagnostics. It's called a power probe, and basically just by touching the terminal right there, it'll tell you if it's a ground or a hot circuit. And if it is a hot circuit, it'll tell you the voltage that it has. And it's also helpful for grounding out a circuit or supplying power to a circuit. And you can do that without turning on the key. So very helpful tool indeed, and it has LEDs on the end to act like a flashlight. And I like to use these whenever I'm doing, checking fuses, checking for supply voltage, things like that. It really cuts down the time. Like fuses, you don't have to pull them out. You just probe the backs. You'll have power on one side, power not available on the other side, and that'll let you know it's blown. And it cuts down the diagnostic time significantly. So I'm gonna go ahead and probe all the fuses in the panel underneath the console and see if we have any blown fuses with this thing. So let's go ahead and do that. Everything right here checks out fine, so we know that all the fuses are good. So it looks like that power transistor was the culprit. So just to show you my verification, I pulled the timing light in here, and I'm gonna hold it down real quick. If I can position this correctly. Let's see how I'm gonna do this. Hold on real quick. I'm gonna turn it on, and as you can see, it's gonna fire. So that tells me we fixed the coil problem. It was a power transistor. So I did a good thing by going ahead and swapping that out for a new one. So now I got to play with the timing of the distributor and see if we can find the sweet spot on that and see if we can get this damn thing to run. All right, so I was able to fire it up, and it is missing pretty bad again, and I started probing around with this infrared thermometer, and I'm getting the coldest signature right there out of the #1 bank. So that tells me that the misfire is coming from cylinder 1. I pulled the spark plug out. The spark plug is dry. I do not smell any fuel. I took the flashlight, looked down in the cylinder bore. It's dry as well, so I'm thinking that we got an injector problem or a signal to that injector. But I'm gonna go ahead and do a compression test with the compression tester just to verify the cylinder pressure is good, and then I'm gonna have to dig around and do some further diagnostics on that injector. But that's where I'm at right now, so I'll keep you guys posted what I find. So I'm using the extended leads right here. I have one down to the starter solenoid connector. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and use this to connect to the battery, and we'll see where the pressure's at. So we got plenty of pressure to make a combustion, so that is good to go. Now I know that the cylinder pressure is good, the timing is right, because I counted the teeth on it whenever I was installing it, but it was in question. We know now that the cylinder has plenty of pressure in order to make a combustion process happen. So now I'm going to go ahead and check with a Noid light on the connector for the #1 cylinder right there on the injector, and we'll see if it flashes, and if it does, we know we got an issue with that injector. So now that we know we got compression in the cylinder, we could focus on the fuel side of things, the injector, and I started probing around on the connector for the injector, and now I have the key completely off. I got power on one side of the connector and power on the other side of the connector with the key off. Now that is not a good thing, and I pulled off another connector as well. Same thing. Power to both sides. So I got the schematic up right here. I'm gonna go ahead and do some continuity checks from each individual pin out on the ECU to each individual injector to make sure that I do have the proper placement for the connectors to the injectors. And then after that, I'm gonna start tracing on the side of the power, and it's gonna be a little bit time consuming for me to figure this all out, but I'll take you guys along, tell you what I find, and hopefully we can figure all this out. And after I figure that out, it should have no issues cranking and running. So let's cross our fingers and let's hope we find this thing in a timely manner so that we can get this thing fired up and running right. So I was doing some digging around in the harness, trying to figure out what was going on with the injector wiring, and the ECU pinout and the wiring schematic that I pulled up from a factory manual online showed that each individual injector had its own wiring back to the ECU. Now when I unraveled it, they had a lot of them paralleled off, and as I did an ohm check from the ECU pinout, turns out pins 103 and 104 were the ones that they teed off of. Now they had like 103 feeding one side of the engine and 104 feeding the other side, and two injectors actually had a short between the two. So I started doing some digging around on the internet, and I come across an article that stated that they did this mod later on in the years to save labor costs, but they just went ahead and, you know, covered the connections for each individual injector wire, and they look like this when you pull the wiring harness back. So this is number 5, this is number 3 right here, and then this is number 1. So I'm gonna go ahead and wire them like they're supposed to be from the factory wiring schematic, and let's see how that works in the end. So it's gonna also allow me to clean up all this extra wiring as well. So I'm gonna go from here to 1, here to 3, there to 5, and I'll be able to clean this wiring up quite a bit. And it did the same on the other side as well. They have them covered up on the ends. Like here's one of the injector wiring pair right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and solder those in and be able to have a direct link from the ECU to the each individual injector as it is in the wiring schematic. So just a little FYI, you guys, that's what it is on these Z31s. I think from 86 on up they did this, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, if you're wanting to clean up your wiring harness, it's definitely something you might want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and solder these in, and then I'll show you what it's like in the end, and we'll crank it up and see what happens. Okay, so I modified the harness, and here's cylinder 1. There's the connection right there. Cylinder 3, connection right there. Cylinder 5, connection right there. And when I ohmed it back from the ECU, I gotta tell you that it was like 0.01 ohms, and before I was reading like 15 ohms, sometimes 25 ohms on depending on the connector. So this is definitely gonna help out as far as the continuity goes. And I got to do the same to the other side, and once that's done, I'll wrap it all up with electrical tape and we'll fire it up and see what happens then. So I was able to get rid of all these wires right here and got rid of all these nasty splices that had been aging over the years. So I was able to take care of all that, and now we got nice clean wiring into every injector, and every injector goes to each individual pin on the ECU. And I did a continuity check, and we are damn near perfect on the continuity to each individual injector. And it came up pretty good. I mean, it's nice and cleaner now. It's not a whole bunch of extra wiring. So we took care of that problem. I did the injector mod, and it is all good. So this junk. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and connect the battery back up. I'm gonna go ahead and fire it up. Hopefully this will solve the problem. If it don't, then I'm gonna have to go back to the drawing board and see what else it can be and do more diagnostics, but let's see if this works. Well, I can definitely tell a difference with the injector mod that I did. The cylinders seem to be less missing, if that makes sense. It's not vibrating as bad, but I'm running really, really rich. Now, I can't tell if it's just from the over richness causing it to run that way, feeling like it's missing, making it run rough, or is it actually missing? So I'm gonna have to do more diagnostics to see, but I can tell a difference by doing that mod. But we are way too rich on the O2 sensor readout on the wideband. I'm in the low 10s to high 9s to 1. air-fuel ratio, and it's super rich, and that would cause misfires. So I got to dig more into this thing. I'm going to end up taking the spark plugs out. I'm going to do a full compression test on all 6 cylinders, figure that out, make sure that mechanically we are good, and then from there, I'm going to have to just brainstorm about what I'm going to do next. And if I can't figure out the damn problem, because I got the Apexy unit all the way negative in that RPM range, and it does not seem to be making a difference at all. So the injectors with that Apexy unit may not be working out just right. So I might end up putting the factory injectors back in, because I know it ran good with those before. So the injectors may be the downfall of this whole setup. So with that Apexy unit, I just don't know enough about it, and you know, I'm doing what the manual says. I'm taking fuel out of it, and it's just not making a difference. So I know with it being too damn rich like that will cause it to run really rough, and I'm kind of hoping that that's what's happening. So I'm gonna have to regroup and figure out where to go from here. So it's just one of those things. And also, you know, I'm pretty stoked about the mod. I'm glad I came across that that write-up. The number 6 injector wires, FYI guys, it's all the way back here in the harness. You have to cut it out of the electrical tape and all that back there. And I ended up fishing it all back and pulled it from this spot up in order to get to it, and extended the wires, and was able to tuck it under this way and make it pretty nice. So at least we got a nice injector mod going on. We got that going on for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to bed. I'm tired. I'm gonna go home, rest, think about it, do some more research, and come back in with another game plan. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and do a compression test first thing, make sure mechanical, we're all good, and then we'll move on from there. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, guys. Well, it's been a couple days since that last clip, and yesterday I didn't bring my camera in, but Eric showed up to the shop, and I had him get in the car and crank it and keep it running, and I used a special tool in order to find out exactly what the hell's going on with this engine, and I found out what the problem was. So now that I know what the problem is, we're gonna fix that thing, but it's gonna be on the next episode. But just to show you what I did to figure it out, I used this special tool here. It is a stethoscope. I had this on my ears. Eric had the car running, and I used this probe right here to put on each individual injector, and every injector is firing. I get loud clicking noises out of all of them besides cylinder 1. So that injector is stuck. Now I ohmed it. It gives me the proper ohms just like all of them, but the pintle is stuck. I used a punch and a hammer to give it some taps while pulsing the injector, and I still couldn't get it to unstick, but that explains everything. If you remember, I used the infrared, and we went to every exhaust port, and they were hot on all exhaust ports besides cylinder 1. When I removed that spark plug, it was in fact dry, so there lies the problem. That injector is stuck. So I got to get with the guy I bought it from. Hopefully he'll warranty it out, give me another injector to replace it with. But until that point, I'm gonna go ahead and install those factory injectors back on it. So with that being said, next episode, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna clean those injectors. I'll pulse them. I'll show you how I just do a little, you know, at-home injector clean. We'll get those things cleaned out. We'll pulse them, make sure everything works properly on those injectors, and then we'll put those factory ones back on the car, finally get this damn thing running properly, and then we'll take it on some rips. I'll see how well I can adjust that Apexy unit, and see how many how well it works, I guess, and see what the gains are from there. So at least we know what the problem is. We know we'll get it working right on the next episode. So that's what you got to look forward to. So with that being said, guys, thank y'all for sticking around on this episode. I hope y'all enjoyed the diagnostics that I've performed on this. It's been a little while since I've had to fight a little problem like that, so it allowed me to exercise my diagnostic skills, and that's always a good thing. So until next episode, guys, like, comment, subscribe, and share. Stay tuned.